Welcome, everybody, to a hard hitting edition, a bone crushing edition of the playbook. Here, hosted by Lailend, Duncan,
Brody.
and today we are talking about the hardest division in the NFL. We're talking about the AFC North. We're talking about the schedules. Schedules came out about a week ago, and so we're here today to talk about what what is going on here in the AFC North. Last year, Steelers won the division. This has been a division over the last 10 or so years, at least since I've been watching football, that has been the hardest one in terms of to win, right? Because any of these teams, at least the Ravens, Steelers, and Bengals have been in the race to win the division, and so like throughout the last couple of years, these guys have just been bouncing back and forth on who's the big dog, who's going to win the division, who's the toughest in the division. So we got a big important one to go over here. If you want to get into what makes this the toughest division in football.
I mean, you really look at it, and you have three potential playoff teams all in one division. You have the Steelers, you have the Ravens, and you have the Bengals, which the Ravens and the Bengals probably have, the third and fourth, or fourth and fifth best quarterbacks in the NFL with Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow when healthy. But yeah, I think this, and Cleveland, they got better in the draft, they got better in the offseason. This could be a potential, like in the next 2-3 years, we could see this division being like, okay, it's going to be a four-way, not a tie, but like this needs to happen. If this happens, then this happens. Then if this happens, then this happens, just for each team to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. I think this is one of the few divisions in the NFL that is just loaded, and it's and it feels like whoever makes it out of this division always goes into the playoffs like battered and bruised and beat up, and like I just feel like this is a hard division to get. And getting into the schedule part of things, we're talking about the toughest schedule in the AFC North, and to me, this is not really close. This is the Cincinnati Bengals. I think they have a rough schedule this year. I mean, it's going to be rough because you have to play six division games, and so those are always going to be tough in this division. But I mean, we can just take a look at it here. You have KC, you have the Commanders, who I think is going to give them a run for their money. I think the Commies are going to be really good this year. You have the Falcons, you have the Buccaneers, you have the Jaguars, you have the Texans. So I think this schedule is rough, like top to bottom, especially for a team that really needs to. This is like, I think this is their last hurrah. If they suck, I think Joe Burrow is going to leave in the near future. I think this is his, because I don't see Joe Burrow being a 20-year quarterback in this league just with the amount of injuries he's had so early on. It's unfortunate, but I think that like this is their last hurrah. But who do you think has the toughest schedule here in AFC North?
I do disagree with you. I think it is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers, just because they have New England, that you got to play Cincinnati twice a year. You have Tampa, which when they start off the year, they're good to start off the year. I mean, they're kind of like shaky to start off the year. Like last year, they started off tough, then they were good, and then they kind of ended the year out. They kind of like they didn't end up winning their division, and then so Tampa Bay is always tough. Like I said, you got Cincinnati. You have to go. This stretch is probably the toughest out of the division. They have their bye week, week 9. Then they go Cincinnati away, Philadelphia away, then they're home versus Denver and Houston, and then they go to Jacksonville, and then they have Baltimore at the end at week 15 at the end of the year. Me personally, I think that week 10 to week 15 stretch is the most brutal in the whole entire division.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Other than the fact I would give the schedule edge to Cincinnati, but I think that is a brutal stretch. But I think I don't know, like I guess, and I think I take it for granted. I think we all kind of take it for granted in terms of like Pittsburgh, which is just like they just seem to hold the physical edge in every game they go into, and so like it just changes the aspect of the game because it changes what you expect to happen. You know it's going to be low scoring, probably not a crap ton of touchdowns going on. So it kind of changes the aspect. So to me, it's like, yeah, the games are probably their games are going to be tough, but I don't know. It's hard for me to give them the edge for the toughest schedule because it feels like they always have a schedule and they just don't stick in there. And so that's why I gave the edge to Cincy because Cincy I feel like has never benefited from this easy schedule, and I think that continued this year. Now we have to talk about best chances to win the division, and this really, I mean, like, we talked about it most probably. Let's go either way. Steelers won it last year. The year before that, it was Baltimore, I believe, and then Cincinnati was won it not too long ago. So, who do you have winning the division this year in 2026?
If either quarterbacks are healthy, I'm going to go with either Cincinnati and Baltimore. I do think Baltimore is going to get it just because of their late round bye week. They have, I think, the second latest bye that you can get, which is week 13. I think the latest one you can get is week 14. But, I mean, they end out the year tough with Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. But like they open up the year where they could go either 6-0 or even 5-1 if we're not being crazy. And then they have Cincinnati, Buffalo, Jacksonville, Los Angeles, the Chargers, and they have Carolina and Houston. Like that kind of 5-game stretch. If you go 2-3 in that, or 3-2 in that stretch, you could go into the bye week, 9-2, or
Yeah,
even 9-3.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the key to this division is going to be who gets going early. I think that the team that starts off the season, and this is I mean, the Bengals are notoriously known for being a terrible early season team, right? Like we've seen them go, I believe, as bad as 0-4, still and make the playoffs. I think they're our only team in NFL history to go 0-4 and turn around and make the playoffs. But they can't, and if they wanted to win the division, they can't afford that this year. If they're going to need a fast start. And I think that this is going to be the first year in a long time that we get that. I think that for the first time in a long time, we're going to get two teams that we're going to get a start from Cincinnati and Joe Burrow and company that is going to fill the way to a division lead. So that's who I'm going to go with, Cincinnati for the division. And I think it's kind of the desperation for Zach Taylor and company. Like this has just got to be a good year. And so as we take a look at the schedule, you open the season up against Tampa Bay, which I think is going to be a little bit on the rougher side. I think they get it done. Then you have to travel to Houston. That's going to be rough because you don't have you're not known for an O line, and that Houston D line is ridiculous. And then you travel to Pittsburgh. I think they win Pittsburgh. I think they beat Jacksonville, and then as the season goes on, I think their schedule lightens out before they have to play KC and Baltimore to end the season. So those are the last two really hard games for them, and I think that's why I'm going to give them just the slight edge in terms of winning the division. But I think it's going to be close, and I think it's going to come down either to a tiebreaker or to like within a game of each other. Like I just think that's just kind of how this shapes up. But we saw last year, right? Like the Bengals owned the Ravens at the end of the season. Remember that first game Joe Burrow came back where the Bengals, if you remember, the Bengals just refused to run the ball. Joe Burrow coming off of an injury came back and he threw like 40 passes and they won very easily. It was on Thanksgiving night. Like I just think that barring like Lamar has to play good and be healthy, and I think the Bengals get it done, which kind of gets you into like we touched on this in the AFC East video, like revenge games here. I think the biggest one for Baltimore is going to be obviously the Bills, because if we remember that Week 1 thriller between the Bills and the Ravens, in which that game what the Bengals or the Bills were up what like 20, 21 points in the like deep in that game, or sorry, the Ravens were, and they blew it, and the Bills came all the way back. So I think that's the biggest revenge game, just because never seems like Lamar can beat Allen or Mahomes, and so I that's what I would go for them. In terms of the Bengals, you look at their schedule and like there's not really much revenge going on. So I think the only thing I really touch on there is that the Bills and Ravens rivalry.
Yeah. I do think like it's tough because I always think that like Ravens Bengals is always a good rivalry game. You know, I think at the end of the year, they play week 17, so that could be for the division. You never know. I'm not really going to go with this. Isn't really like a revenge game, but it's kind of like classic. And we might talk about it in our AFC West video, but I think it's going to be when the Bengals, when Kansas City comes into Cincinnati and plays the Cincinnati Bengals. I think Joe Burrows, is he undefeated or is he 3-1 or 4
In the regular season, he's
something like that against Mahomes?
Yeah, in the regular season, he's undefeated.
Okay.
And Mahomes,
but he's lost to them once
in the playoffs in the AFC Championship. Yes. Mahomes has never won in Cincinnati too. That's the other thing. He's never won in Cincinnati. Another big talking point of that game. Absolutely, that always a classic when Mahomes and Burrow lace it up. So I'm excited for that one too. We'll definitely touch on that in the AFC West video. But I think the most physical matchup that we're going to see is just going to be Ravens Steelers. I think it's always the most physical. The fun thing about that last game of the season last year that decided the division was it wasn't very like it was physical, but it was high scoring. And we didn't you don't really see that.
Yeah.
These two teams, Rodgers and Lamar, they went back and forth, and obviously Tyler Loop cost the Ravens the division. Wild way that ended. But I think that's going to be the most physical matchup this season. I just think that's kind of what it is. Like I just think that's kind of they're always the toughest. But if you want to touch on that,
yeah, I also agree with that. I think that is the toughest for because I feel like Bengals Ravens. Or not Bengals, Ravens, Pittsburgh or Steelers, Ravens, and then Bengals, Browns. Like Bengals and Browns have a better rivalry, and then it's the Ravens and Steelers have a better rivalry. So I will agree with that. And the Ravens and Pittsburgh, they close out the season again. So who knows? That could be for the division again. Like if Baltimore doesn't win against Cincinnati and they have to beat Pittsburgh to get the division. And Pittsburgh can win to get up to second place, and the Ravens drop to third place, or there's so many things that could happen in this one.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally forgot about that they are closing the season. We could get a total repeat of what we just saw happen. Although I do think that the Bengals will be in the mix. My hot take last year around midseason when Burrow came back was that the Bengals were going to run the table. And get the division back and make the playoffs, and they were really close. Just some key losses down the season, like the loss of the Bills and Buffalo in the game they should have won, kind of cost them. And I think that's why I think that the Bengals are going to win this year. But I totally agree. As we can now get into specific team talk here, we're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're talking about the defending AFC North champions, the Kings of the North. The Pittsburgh Steelers, who have went through a almost complete transformation this offseason. Mike Tomlin is gone. Future of Aaron Rodgers is up in the air. Mike McCarthy now takes the reins. They drafted Drew Aller to go along with Will Howard and Mason Rudolph. They added, I believe, Christian Kirk signed with them to add to that receiver room, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken, but I believe that's
I think that's right, yeah.
Yeah, I believe Christian Kirk signed there.
They also got Rico Dowdle and Michael Pittman too.
Dowdle and MPJ. Yep, totally. So they got some new weapons there. Defensively, they're just kind of getting old. Watt's getting up there. I think Watt's a midseason trade candidate potentially, if not next offseason. I think that I know he loves Pittsburgh, but in terms of like the money they're paying him, like I think that desperately needs an edge rusher will go out to make a deal for TJ Watt. But that's another time when we get to midseason. Defensively, yeah, but they're just getting old. Ramsey's getting up there. He's not even good enough to play corner anymore. He plays safety. Love Joey Porter Jr. Total lockdown on the outside. Gets a lot of penalties though. Patrick Queen, not as great. Highsmith to go along with Watt, and then that I just feel like the defense isn't as good as years past. A little suspect on that side, but this offense looks legit. Arthur Smith's gone, so no more boring run concepts. We can finally get some young guns slinging it around, and with Mike McCarthy. So I'm excited to see what you think about this team.
Yeah, I'm kind of that one person. It's really that 1 year where Pittsburgh went, 11-0, and then they dropped their last 6 or 7, however many games it was. I'm not a big fan of the Steelers, but this year I like what they did. I do kind of think you start the season off with Mason Rudolph, kind of see how he does. Because we don't even know what Rodgers is going to do. Maybe start him against like Atlanta and New England against like these like tough teams, and then once you play Cleveland week 4, you could put Drew Aller out there, or Will Howard, whoever because they've got a young quarterback room. You can really go with whoever they want. I personally think that they should go with Drew Aller. I think you should just kind of see how he does, kind of let the players around him develop and let him develop as well. Preseason is a thing. Let him see how he does during the preseason, and if he struggles out of the gate, every rookie does that. They look good during the preseason. As a Broncos fan, Bo Nix looked really good during the preseason, and then he kind of struggled his first year. Mm-hmm. So I think if you let the offense do what it does, and you let the defense kind of just go and play. And I do agree with you. I think that defense is really, really old. But I think if you let that offense, kind of cook, and the defense just like let them play, I think they could be up there for the division title.
Yeah, I think that the Steelers defense is going to be middle of the pack. I don't think they're going to be I think like 16, 17 around there. Worst, maybe 20. I don't think they'll be that bad, but I think they're definitely on the suspect side. In terms of the offense, I'm going to disagree with you on Aller. I think they should go with Will Howard. They're going to start one of the young guns. I think ideally they start Howard week 1. I think ideally Rodgers retires. You go roll into week 1 with Howard instead of Rudolph. I think Rudolph should be QB3. I think Mason Rudolph at this point is just I don't like him. And so I think you roll in and then see how Howard starts, and then you go with Aller depending on how that looks, because Will Howard did just sit behind Aaron Rodgers for a year and get to learn and kind of grow from that. So I think that's why I would roll with Will Howard on that. But everything else with you, I agree. I think the offense should be much improved in terms of like offensive efficiency. I think that their passing game numbers are going to skyrocket up. I like the Rico Dowdle signing. So all of those things I think are going to be very positive. In terms of their record prediction, I think that with Pittsburgh, I'm feeling 9-8, 10-7, like max. I don't think that they're going to be don't think that they're going to be anything like super duper special, but I think they'll be as good as they are usually and potentially make a run at it.
I also have them. I have them getting a winning record I have the Steelers getting a winning record like 9-8 or 10-7. It's not going to be huge, but
yeah. I totally agree with you. As now we can move to the runner-ups. Probably should have been King of the North, Baltimore Ravens, who I think if that game is the Ravens versus the Texans, and the Ravens win at home, or the Ravens get a home game. I think they win at home, and then your Broncos would have been looking at the Ravens instead of the Bills. Think about how that would have. Then we got a Bills Patriots. Think about how that would have shaken up the playoff picture. But this year we're in the present, and the Ravens had an interesting offseason to say the least. Traded for Crosby, then backed out of that trade and signed Trey Hendrickson. So still got a premier edge rusher. Although I think Crosby's just a little bit better than Hendrickson. I like Trey Hendrickson a lot. I think he's the most underrated pass rusher in the game. And I think people don't give him the credit he deserves because he's not flashy or anything like that. He's very technique based. He's not going to beat you with raw power, but he can. He's just very good in that way, and so I like that signing for them a lot. Then I liked in the middle of the draft when they doubled up on receiver and got Surratt and Jacoby Lane, kind of put pressure on this receiving core that we've seen be the same for like the last, it feels like 400 years. Like Bateman's been there for forever. Zay Flowers, we've been around for the last three. Right, and then after that, it kind of just falls off. And then you have Andrews, who's there, but no more Isaiah Likely, which I think is a little bit of a blow. I would like to see them bring him back, but good on him for going to likely be tight end one in New York. So I like that a lot in terms of their offense, and I think that this is a pretty good team. If you want to touch on the Baltimore Ravens,
I think I do really like what you said about the part where they got Elijah Surratt. I really do like that. I do like what they did in free agency. I just don't like how they got, like I said, like you said, got rid of Isaiah Likely, because in my opinion, I don't think Mark Andrews is that guy. I mean, he's getting up there. He's 30 years old, and we saw him drop a crucial ball. I think it was like a year ago or 2 years ago in the playoffs. But I mean, if he has like a, I guess, weird saying this from Mark Andrews, but if he has a breakout year and he like comes back from where he was last year, I do think the Ravens are going to be good. And again, with that week 13 bye, I think they're really going to flourish with that week 13 bye, because you'd much rather play 12 straight games than finish out with 5 than play 5 in a row then have your bye week and then play 12 straight. So I think if you can really get through, like I said, if you can get to your bye week at 9-3 and then finish out the year winning 3 of those next games, you could end up going 12-5 and winning your division potentially.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good team. I mean, obviously they're going to be competitive. Lamar, as we've touched on, Lamar is not a loser. He's got, I believe, the best winning percentage of quarterbacks who've had at least 75 starts. So like he just wins a lot, and so that obviously you have to factor that in. And obviously, if he's healthy full season, then obviously they're going to be good. But like, I feel like this is like Lamar's big test year. You know what I'm saying? Like Lamar hasn't had much pressure on him in a while. 2-time MVP, should have been 3-time. The year Josh Allen won it, I will die on that hill. Lamar should have won that MVP.
I agree.
But just a total stud, because he was first team All Pro and they didn't give him the MVP. Like, please make that make sense. Great player, but like, he's running out of time. Like, he's running out of runs, right? His first MVP year, they're 14-3. Excuse me, that was back when we had a 16-game schedule. So they're 13-3. 14-2. Lose to the Titans at home. Then he gets hurt the year after that. Then the second MVP year, they're the 1 seed, lose to KC on the AFC Championship game. Like, and then obviously 2 years ago in the crucial drop, Mark Andrews drops it, they lose to Buffalo. So like, they're running out of time to make a run. Obviously, Derrick Henry's getting up there with age, and so I don't know what to expect from them. But I think that in terms of a record prediction for the Ravens, I'm gonna roll with 12-5. Like you said, I think they're gonna be tied with the Bengals, but the Bengals get the division crown.
Yeah. I also agree with that too. I do think that this is Lamar's big year. Like I 100% agree with you on that. Uh, they do have some tough games in there, and I mean I'm gonna say this: they're always a tough team. Dallas, you got Dallas, you have Cincinnati, you have again Pittsburgh. They can if they show up late in the year. They always show up late in the year. Uh, you have Jacksonville, who was good last year. I think that like I said in like our previous videos, I think that they are going to regress by a couple of wins. And like again, you have Buffalo, you have Houston, which they have a good defense, and if Stroud can really pull it together, then I think, and even Tampa too. Like Tampa's a I wouldn't say a great team, but they're a good team. They've made the playoffs. But yeah, I think this is Lamar's year, and if he can get that one seed, and if he doesn't have to play Mahomes in or Allen in the playoffs, I think he's doing just fine.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you on that. I think that when you look at the Ravens, like it's going to be a good team, and like you said, I think that they'll be top of the run. But like you said, like there's you just kind of know, and so which segues us to the Cincinnati Bengals, who have been just like honestly one of the oddest teams. They have a franchise quarterback, Joe Burrow, who I think when he's at his best when Joe Burrow's Joe Burrow, he's like top two. And we've seen that kind of both of these last 2 years when he's healthy and playing the sport. The dude just takes over, right? Doesn't turn over the ball much, very accurate with the ball, has got a rocket arm, elite football IQ, just a total stud. And then Jamar Chase and then T. Higgins, this offense is great. And then defense. You have to play defense. And they've been horrendous. Not to mention their terrible offensive line, but I feel like that's just a concept we beat into the ground at this point. The defense, on the other hand, losing Trey Hendrickson, adding Brian Cook, who I like as a signing, adding Sexy Dexy. So like defense gets better. But like the question is, can the defense survive the schedule, and what do you feel about that? Because I think that they'll hold up enough to win games, but I think it's really going to kill them in the playoffs because I just don't think they're there yet.
Yeah, I do agree. I agree with you on that. Like it was in 2024 where they were scoring, 30 over 35 points almost every like they were averaging like 33 34 points a game, and they kept losing the games. Like they went into overtime against the Baltimore Ravens and they scored 38. They lost 41-38. They went into Carolina 34-24. Like they scored so many points and they still ended up like losing and then they played Baltimore again and they lost 35-34.
Yeah.
They scored 27 against the Chargers and lose 34-27. They score 38 against the Pittsburgh Steelers and lose 44-38. Like I do agree that this defense is very improved from last season, like from 2024 to this season. But you never know. And
yeah,
that's why they have the saying defense wins championships.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
And we've seen it like I'm not trying to brag, but like last year, the Seahawks, obviously, like that defense was really good. Super Bowl 59, that Eagles defense was insane. The Chiefs, when they went on their went on their two-peat, they had a great defense. The Rams, defense, or the Rams, that defense was insane. The Broncos, when they won in Super Bowl 50, that defense was crazy. You have to have a good defense because if you score, it doesn't matter how you do on offense because you could go out that we literally saw in 2024. You could go out and score 500 points, but as long as that defense doesn't stop the other team, you're gonna end up losing those games.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be their Achilles heel. A game I really want to highlight is the Jags and Bengals, and I think that game would have been a classic last year if it wasn't cut off due to Burrow's injury. But I think that game is going to fly. I think that game is going to be a lot of points. I think that game's going to I highlighting that as a potential game of the year pick already. I think that game's going to be really high score, like 40s. high 30s. Like I think that's going to be a really high game. I just wanted to touch on that a little bit before we get over to the Browns. I think that's going to be a really fun game. Overall for the Bengals, I'm going to roll with a 12, like I said, 12-5 record, and they do get the division nod over the Ravens.
I do agree with you on that. I do want to say this defensive secondary for the Bengals is decent. They have Kyle Duggar, who I really like, Brian Cook, who I really like. They have CTB, Dax Hill, who can be good in those times. They have Demetrius Knight Jr., who's he's shown up in some games. They just got he's a little older. Player. Yeah, he got who else did they get? They got a really good dude in the Sexy Desi. I think the most underrated get of this offseason was Boye Mafe. I really like that. Miles Murphy, Shamar Stewart. He was okay last year. They also picked up Jonathan Allen. So who knows? They have Cassius Howell too. This defensive line is iffy, but I mean, if they can go out there and win you the games, I think you got to improve the linebackers, obviously. But defense, the defensive line, that's a good defensive line.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that it's going to be a good year. I know you have the Ravens getting the division over the Bengals, so but I think that those two teams are going to be top of the division. And speaking of the opposite of top of the division, team I have is the last of the division, the Cleveland Browns, the Brownies, the neglectful franchise, never gets the luck. Never gets the good draw of the stick. But I don't think this team is going to be necessarily bad. I don't think they're going to be bad to watch. I think that this is going to be an interesting team to watch, have fun. I'm pleading with the coaching staff, Todd Monken, please don't start Deshaun Watson. Please don't start Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson at this point is far from the greatness we saw in 2020, 2021. Signing him to that 5-year, $230 million contract, fully guaranteed, if we remember, every dollar they gave him every dollar of $230 million. One of the worst, actually not even one of the worst contracts in the history of, I could say, professional sports. It's that bad of a contract. And please don't start Deshaun Watson, and you rolled with Shedeur Sanders, who, yes, didn't have the greatest rookie year, but he showed flashes of being a competent quarterback. And most importantly, he's got the vote of the fans. He's got the vibe of a NFL starter, of an NFL star. And so roll with him on this offense that you decided you were going to lock in on. We saw Quishon Judkins played really good last year, but this offense has the potential to be really good. They got Casey Concepcion in the first round. They went tackle, I believe, as well. So roll with it and see what this young guy has got. I think that's what they should do. But if you want to give your thoughts on the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, I really do like this team. They kind of I think you do look at it like Shedeur, 1,400 yards in 5 games is not bad. He had 7 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Obviously, you don't want that. He was sacked 23 times. You don't want that. But looking at his the games that he played, he lost by 2 points to Tennessee. He got obliterated by the Bears. He only came within they came within 3 points of beating Buffalo, and then they beat Pittsburgh and they beat Cincinnati. If you can let this guy, like you said, he showed flashes last year. I think you start the season out with Shedeur. I think this is one of the best young two-headed monsters in running backs in Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson. If you can get Dylan Sampson to the ball more than Quinshon was really good last year. I like that. I like the Denzel Boston, Casey Concepcion, Isaiah Bond, and they also have the stud that they got last year in Harold Fannin Jr. I
Mhm.
really like like that. That's not a bad receiving core. You just got to develop these guys. And
Yeah,
next year, like
absolutely.
if they do want to go out, and because like should you could rock the season with Shadur and be like, okay, do we get a guy next year? Because me personally, I think they could get like a Trinidad Chambliss if he falls to them, or a guy that could just you could fit him in, see if he works. If he doesn't, then go with Shadur and see how Shadur does.
I think Shador is better than Chambliss. I will say that. I don't like Trinidad Chambliss at all as an NFL prospect, but we will get into that closer to next year's draft, which
Yeah.
should be a fun one. But I think the Browns are a very interesting team to talk about. In terms of record, I see them going a smooth like around 6 and 11, 5 and 12. I don't think this team is set to be like a 7, 8 win team, but I do think that they're gonna be fun to watch. They're gonna be more competitive in the last couple of years, and that's why I think I have them there. But if you want to get into your suspected record prediction,
Yeah, I have them going 6-11 or 7-10. The game that's kind of either way is the New York Giants game.
Giants.
Because yeah, I mean, you never know with Harbaugh. I trust Harbaugh. I think he's
I
going to
don't.
do really good in New York.
I can't.
But
I can't call that. I don't think.
really,
I cannot see the Browns being the Giants. No way.
I mean, that game I could see kind of going either way. But another game is Indianapolis. We don't know what's going to go on with them. So, but I think their max win is going to be 7. I just don't know if they can. But right now, I'm sticking at 6-11.
Yeah. I think the indie game's interesting, and we'll get into that when we get into our AFC South schedule breakdown. But I'm going to agree with you on there. As we look to close this one out, I think the 2 playoff teams from this division are going to be the Bengals and the Ravens. If I think both of them are going to make it. I just think that's kind of how the thing shapes out. Ravens, Bengals are going to make it. Bengals getting the nod. My final division standings: Cincy 1, Baltimore 2, Pittsburgh 3, and then finally the Browns at 4. If you want to give yours.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Ravens, Bengals, Steelers, Browns. And I think it is going to be a close race between 1, 2, and 3. I think it's going to be 12-5, 12-5. I think they will have the same, but I think the Ravens are going to get that last one when they go into Cincinnati. I think it's going to be a really tough one. I think they barely squeak it out though. And I mean, Cleveland, if you can finish the year 6-11, that's not bad for finishing 4th in a division with potentially 3 playoff teams.
Yep, I agree. As that was our AFC North schedule breakdown, obviously known as the toughest division in football, and I think they're going to live up to that again this year. But I'm Lailend Duncan, along with
Brody Carter.
And this is the playbook signing off. We'll see you in our AFC South record prediction, which is our schedule breakdown, which is coming next. Thank you.
Yes. See you guys.